usually pwned by people upon hiring. Figure out what people who do what you do in the area that you do it, figure out what they make. This is not hard. There are at least 20 websites out there that will tell you or give you an estimate of what people in your field doing your specific job function, what they're making, what people are paying out there. Once you have good data on what other people are making out there, and it's time for your salary negotiation at the end of the year, it's time for you to get hired, demand more than what the average is because you're worth it. Always go into salary negotiations and ask for 150% of what you think you're worth. The funny thing is, 1 out of every 3 times, they're just going to give it to you. Because anybody who has the balls to go in and talk with a manager and say, yeah, I'm worth X amount of dollars, they'll usually say, oh, well, that person's really confident in what they do, so they're probably a really good employee. We don't want to lose them, so we're going to pay them that. Seriously, your next salary negotiation, just try that. Hackers always cower before managers when it comes to salary negotiations. There is no reason for this. Ask for 150% because the worst thing they can do is say no. And you start negotiating from there. Always be able to justify 100% of what you ask for. 100% of what you think you're worth. If you think you're worth more than all of the other people out there that are doing your jobs and your company wants to pay you less, start looking for a new job. Unless you really, really like the culture of the company that you're in, unless you really, really like the people that you work with, unless you really, really don't want to lose that job, go out there and get paid more money because most hackers don't like where they work. And actually, if you like the people that you work with, if you like the people who manage you, if you like the culture of your company, you probably never want to leave it. But that's still no excuse to not go in and ask for 1.5 times what you're worth at salary negotiation times. Because if you have a company that meets all 3 of those things, they're probably going to pay you that anyway. And this is real money that we're talking about. In a 5-minute conversation, you can double what you make in a year. Also, a lot of hackers are independent contractors. And a lot of independent contractors will go out there and seek business at half of what it's worth just so that they can get the business. If you've been an independent contractor for more than a year and you're charging what you charged when you first started out, you are an idiot. Or you're not doing your job very well and you can't get the business. The more that you've been in and out there as an independent contractor, you should be charging the same or twice as much as the other people who are out there charging who don't know how to do their jobs and get away with charging it. Seriously, people who come to HackerCons are usually really good at what they do and they charge too little for it if they're an independent contractor. Always go out there and demand more. You're worth it. Have a spine. And of course, I can't say this enough, seek out adequate professionals to start helping you. The time to figure out tax credits and different things that you can write off in your taxes is January 1 of the tax year you start paying taxes, not April 13th. All right? If you go talk to a CPA and you say, basically tell them everything about your life and all the different things that you're doing, if you're itemizing, if you're just out there in a wage earner and your taxes are, okay, well, this is what I made, I didn't make anything else, and I'm making generally less than $40,000 a year, you probably don't need a CPA to do taxes. You can probably do it in TurboTax. If you're not that person, find a CPA to do your taxes and have a long conversation with them. There are hundreds of independent CPAs out there in the town that you're in. Don't go to H&R Block. Don't go to Jackson Hewitt. Don't go to one of those shops that's only open for 4 months out of the year. Find an independent CPA because they'll usually charge less and give you much better service. And if they know you and they work with you, they can help you. Seth.
What do you think is a reasonable price for getting a CPA to do taxes?
Seth's question was, what do you think is a reasonable price to get a CPA to do your taxes for you? That depends entirely on where you live and what your tax situation is. If you were that $30,000 wage earner that's not going to itemize that the standard deduction is always more than what you give to charity or all the other various different things you can write off when you itemize, you can probably do your taxes in TurboTax. And actually, the funny thing is, TurboTax used to be the best deal out there. If you're just that wage earner, there are many, 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 many free e-file options out there. I mean, absolutely free. They don't charge you to direct deposit your refund. They don't charge you to prepare your return. They don't charge you to prepare your state return if you live in a state that charges state income tax. If you're just that average wage earner with no special tax things that are out there, and you're not having a side business, you're not giving more than $2,000 to charity, and you don't have kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, find the free e-file thing and file your taxes before March 1st, because all of those free services start charging after March 1st, because most people do their taxes after March 1st. But if you're not that wage earner, find a CPA to do your taxes and talk with them. Make sure they know everything that you're doing, because if your CPA doesn't know everything that you're doing, the CPA can't tell you what credits are out there. They have to know every little thing that has any financial consequence out there. And if they're a good CPA, they'll sit there, they'll listen, they'll take notes and say, oh, well, you're doing X such and such. Well, you're eligible for that credit. Oh, well, you're eligible for that deduction. Oh, you're eligible for this, that, and the other. Work with a CPA. The guys at TurboTax and the guys at those shops that are open 4 months out of a year want you in the door, want to ask you a bunch of questions, want to get you out the door, and charge you $200 for talking to you for half an hour. Also, if you're making more than $50,000 a year or you're approaching retirement, and by approaching retirement, I mean that means you're older than 35. If you're older than 30 and you haven't started saving for retirement, start saving for retirement now. I'm absolutely serious about this. Most of the people in this room, I'd say, I guess the median age in the room is like 26, 27. You know, you've got other priorities. You're trying to date people, that sort of thing. Okay, fine. You can postpone. I recommend that you save for retirement anyway. But if you're older than 30, you no longer have an excuse because you're losing money every single day. There's a Louis Ruckhiser thing that's out there. 2 brothers. One started saving for retirement when he was 20. One started saving for retirement when he was 30. The guy who was 20 had the worst luck. He always put his money in the stock market on the worst day of the year. Every single year he retired until he hit retirement at 62. The brother who was 30, who started saving for retirement when he was 30, was the luckiest guy every single year. He put in money on the best day, like the price when everything was lowest on the stock market and always appreciated in value, and was just the statistically luckiest possible investor out there. When the 2 brothers retired, who had more money? The 20-year-old. The 20-year-old had not only more money, but twice as much money as the 30-year-old. The earlier you can start with saving for retirement, the better, because it means that you're getting paid for that money. Like, investments are when you give your money to someone and they pay you for the use of that money. The earlier that you can invest, the better, because you will end up making more money over the long term, and you will be getting paid on what they're paying you to do that. Compound interest. Albert Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest, which is the money that the interest that they paid you, the interest that you're making on the interest that they paid you. Seth.
Does that include matching contributions?
He said, does that include matching contributions? Yes, absolutely that includes matching contributions. The day that you start working for a firm where you can get matching contributions, walk in there, that should be part of your salary negotiations. Like, don't even think about that other money that you're making. You know, even though, you know, the other people in your office have fancier cars, fancier computers, better suits, whatever it is. Actually, you should probably be getting better suits than them, but that's aside from the point. You will be somebody at the end who doesn't have to rely on their children to support them. Okay? A lot of the retirees I see, you know, that I'll go with when I was doing my CPA internship and the retirees came in, they'd be talking about, oh, all the wonderful things that they did in their 20s, 30s, 40s, all the wonderful vacations that they took with their children, and all these other things like that, and now their children are supporting them. There's generally no more humiliating experience that is drawn out over time than asking your children to support you for 30 years. It's humiliating when your paycheck has to come from your parents. I mean, it has to come from your children. It's not so humiliating when it's from your parents, because that's their job. and actually, this leads into another thing that's not in my slide. If you can live with your parents, as in, you know, if you can be in a functional living arrangement with your parents, live with your parents. Don't pay rent. You know, there's no, like, having a shame of having to live with your parents. I mean, okay, here's the things. Depending on where you live, what's your rent payment? What's the shame in living with your parents? Is the shame of living with your parents worth that much more a month? No, it's not. It never is. And if it is for you, you need professional help. Now, granted, I know there are some people who have a certain relationship with their parents that if they spend more than an hour with them in the same, general vicinity, they kill each other. Okay, fine, yeah, don't live with your parents. Okay, if you can't live with your parents for, emotional reasons or psychological reasons, fine. Don't live with your parents. But if you can establish a good living arrangement with your parents, even if they ask you to be, in by a certain time or something like that, if you're over 20, if you're not 18 anymore, you can usually bend the rules a little bit. They will usually respect you. And if not, then you probably shouldn't be living with your parents. But rent, I hate paying rent. Every time I sign that rent check because I can't live with my parents because I'm engaged now, I just get, All right. And then, grow up. Half of the hackers who I work with on their finances are doing one of these three things. Don't spend money for the sole purpose of impressing people that you want to sleep with. Okay? If you're buying cars, suits, big, gigantic, fancy dinners, if you're spending money just to impress somebody that you want to sleep with, stop. If you can't stop, seek professional help. I'm absolutely serious. You think I'm being facetious. You think this is a big joke. But no, these are serious problems people have. These are psychological disorders that have been classified as psychological disorders. You probably need to go on Zoloft if you're wasting money trying to impress people you want to sleep with.
Does that mean you need to get a divorce now? Should you get a divorce now?
No, my fiance's Dutch. She loves the fact that I'm cheap. Okay, and here's the even worse thing. Stop. Okay, well, I'm going to take back that cheap part. I buy expensive suits. And the reason I buy expensive suits is because people in the industry that I work with recognize the difference between a cheap suit and an expensive suit. They know. Most of the people in this room will probably never understand how they know or why they know or how I know what a cheap suit is and what an expensive suit is. Granted, it took me a while to figure this out, but that is a legitimate business investment. And 9 times out of 10, when you walk into some place wearing a suit, just because of what you're wearing, people will take you more seriously and pay you more money. I mean, you have to be thinking about different things like that. Granted, hackers generally, wearing a suit, and then they know, okay, well, why is this guy wearing a suit to an interview to be a network admin when he knows that everybody in this company wears to work, coming to work in hacker shirts and torn jeans? If that's the case, you probably don't need to buy an expensive suit. But if where you work, there are more than 3 people out of every 10 people who are working there that are wearing suits, always going to salary negotiations, always going to interviews, always going to other things wearing an expensive suit because they will start taking you seriously. But anyway, getting back to the slide. Stop subsidizing people you want to sleep with. And by that, I mean giving them money. If there's a friend of yours who is of the gender that you want to sleep with, and you are giving them money, and they are able to work, and it's being that they don't have a very serious mental problem or they don't have limbs, don't subsidize them. All right, there's this guy, somebody who I've worked with who makes $500 a week. I mean, he takes home $500 a week. Every week, he writes a $200 check to his best friend that's been his best friend for ever since we were in high school, and all this stuff. And I keep telling him, you need help. You have a psychological dependency disorder, and you need to seek help. Oh, but she's been my best friend forever, and you're just a CPA, you're not an accountant, or you're just a CPA, you're not a psychologist. And you're right, I'm not a psychologist, but I can recognize that you need help. It's not that hard. All right, these are warning signs that are as obvious as somebody who cannot spend a night of their lives sober. I'm absolutely serious about this. If you are writing checks to people that are of the gender that you want to sleep with, and there's no reason for it, if you're not marrying them, if you're not sleeping with them, if you're sleeping with them, fine, that's okay.